तस्विनावधीतमस्तु मा विद्विषावहै। ॐ शान्ति शान्ति शान्तिः। ॐ सदाशिवसमारम्भां शङ्कराचार्यमध्यमाम् अस्मदाचार्यपर्यन्तां वन्दे गुरुपरम्पराम्। श्रुतिस्मृतिपुराणानाम् आलयं करुणालयं नमामि भगवत्पादं शङ्करं लोकशङ्करम्। समस्तजनकल्याणे निरतं करुणामयं नमामि चिन्मयं देवं सद्गुरुं ब्रह्मविद्वरम्। सर्ववेदान्तसिद्धान्त गोचरं तमगोचरं गोविन्दं परमानन्दं सद्गुरुं प्रणतोऽस्म्यहम्। So we have done the fourfold, we are doing the fourfold qualification, and in that we saw about Vivek and Vairagya.
Swamiji, your voice is little low.
So we were saying that Vivek and Vairagya, two qualities we have seen. Vivek is discrimination between real and unreal, and Vairagya is the absence of craving or dependency on anything for happiness. Because said Dehadi Brahma Padyante Aniti Bhoga Vastu. From the body till Brahmalok, no craving. Jihasa. Jihasa means you drop the desire. Now we come to the third qualification, which is Shama, which is Shatka Sampatti, which is a combination of 6 qualities. It is called Shatka Sampatti because it is 6-fold wealth. They are called the inner wealth, the wealth of the mind. So when one has Vivek, then comes Vairagya. When there is Vairagya, then comes these 6-fold qualities. So verse number 22. Virajya Vishaya Vrata Dosha Drishtya Muhurmuhu Swalakshye Niyata Vastha Manasashama Uchyate. So here he says, what is Shama? Shama is the quality of the mind. Virajya Vishaya Vrata. When we have withdrawn the mind from various sense objects, and again we reflect on the limitations of the sense objects, dosha drishtya muhurmuhu swalakshya niyata avastha, and when the mind is single pointed and focused on its goal, manasa shama uchyati, then the mind has this quality called shama. So shama literally means control of the mind. Mentally not to allow the mind to get distracted from the purpose, from the very goal that one has chosen. That quality is called as shama. So when a person has a goal, there are lots of people who have a goal. But how much do we keep ourselves focused on the goal? The mind easily gets distracted by temptations, and especially spiritual path, the goal is very subtle. The goal is to know who am I, and that self is beyond name, beyond form, beyond qualities, beyond attributes. So to keep the mind on that goal, that I want to know who am I, against all that temptations that is available in the sense objects, in the sense world, that is very difficult. But when that mind has that quality, then only we say it is having shama. Otherwise, mentally our mind goes away somewhere else. Intellectually we value that, okay, this is what I need to understand, this is the goal of my life. But the mind has its own cravings, its own vasanas, temptations, and it just imagines. So while we have done Vivek, Vairagya comes, Shama is the ability where the mind remains on the goal. In contrast are the people, as we see in the second chapter of the Gita. Dhyayato vishayan pumsaha sangasteshu upajayate. When the mind broods, when a person broods over sense objects, one gets attached to those. From that comes desire. Sangat sanjayate kamaha. Kamat krodho vijayate. Then comes anger. Then comes delusion. Then comes loss of memory. Then comes loss of discrimination. Ultimately one perishes. So the mind which broods over sense pleasures. In simple words, it is to not allow the mind to brood and to keep the mind focused on the goal. So even an ordinary goal that people have in the world, they will say that you have to write down a goal statement which must be emotionally compelling. So an emotionally compelling goal statement I have to keep reading again and again every day and align my mind to that goal. The goal must be emotionally compelling to me because then the feeling comes into play. Otherwise, only intellect, logic comes into play. The emotions are somewhere else, which is what happens many times when we have, people study Vedanta and then some weird understanding one gets that there is only Brahman, there is no God, there is no Ishvara, there is no creator, there is no creation. Bhakti doesn't come in the heart. So while our goal is to realize Brahma Satyam Jagan Mithya, emotion is not involved. Emotion still loves the world. I'm still attached to people, to various situations, to objects. So the ability to have connection emotionally to the goal and then to keep the focus on that goal. Even if the mind gets distracted, bring it back. Like in meditation, Bhagavan says in the 6th chapter, Yato yato nischarati manas chanchalam asthiram tatas tato niyam yetad atmanyeva vashanayet. Whenever the mind goes away from the self, bring it back, gently persuade it, bring it back to the self. Now this quality to remain connected and aware of the goal, that is called as Shama, where the mind has been controlled. Mind is not allowed to go out. How does the mind go out? Mind goes out through brooding over sense pleasures. It goes out through regrets of the past. It goes out through reliving some fanciful memories of the past or some enjoyable moments of the past. It goes out through some anxiety for the future. Temptations in the present, memories of the past, anxieties for the future. Mind just goes out. Broad reasons why the mind goes out. And all the three can be overcome when the person is focused on the goal. That's why he said here, Swalakshe Niyata Vastha. Swalakshe, what is one's goal? The mind must be absorbed and focused on the goal. So when a person is able to do that, then the person has Shama. Now, how to do that through the day? So attitude and thoughts, they are two aspects. One is attitude wise, I must know that whatever I am doing, I am a seeker 24/7. Because my goal is to realize the self and whatever I do is affecting this. Because if the body, mind, intellect is not aligned, I cannot transcend the attachment to the BMI. And so if the attachment to BMI has to be transcended, then what should I do? I should be able to align them properly. If I align the BMI properly, then this meditation happens and transcendence of this attachment happens. Now, whatever work I'm doing throughout the day, am I doing it as an offering to the higher purpose? Am I doing it with that sense of full single pointedness, one thing at a time? Those things are very crucial. When we are able to do all those with the right attitude that I am a seeker, how will a seeker respond? So, how is a seeker going to respond to any situation? Somebody tells me something unpleasant, how will I respond? Some success comes my way. Will I get carried away and get excited extremely? How will a seeker respond? If there's something that I don't know, do I put efforts to find out? If I find something is wrong in my thinking, do I keep justifying? So many such things. Through the day, if the mind remains focused on that one aspect, that I am a seeker, that is one way that through the day I maintain this focus on my goal. Second aspect of Shama is the control of the mind, and that can happen through practice of single pointedness, which is through japa. That's one method. Japa is one method. You can apply anything. Pranayam, creative visualization, chakra meditation, so many options are available. Where we train the mind. So what is my goal? I must visualize that. Even in goal setting seminars nowadays, they will tell you that. Make a picture of your goal, stick it on your notice board, keep seeing that every day. Close your eyes and imagine that you have already reached the goal. Because the mind doesn't know the difference between present and future, inside and outside. What it continuously thinks, it makes it happen. So if I see that the goal is already achieved, mind will reach towards that. And so in spiritual aspect, Bhagwan is the goal. So generally we do japa. Ishtadevata's form is there, or anyway, any method to connect to the formless. So whichever way, the goal can be symbolized. 10 minutes, 20 minutes, half an hour, whatever time we can spend in focusing the mind only on that. And when it wanders, again, bring it back. So in meditation, this is what we try to do, achieve this connection with the goal, absorption, and that will come, samadhan will come in that. Absorption of the mind in the goal fully. Shama is, again and again, we try to train the mind to be focused on single pointedness, on the goal. So that is first one. And this is accompanied by withdrawal. So when the mind is focused on the goal, it has to withdraw from everything else. These two cannot go together. That mind is engaging also on one side with the sense pleasures and sense objects and withdrawing also. So in meditation, no other thoughts except the thought of this, the goal that I have chosen. And through the day, the attitude has to be, how will a seeker respond? And a seeker responds with moderation, let us say, in eating food or in watching something. One applies moderation. So again there, what is not good for my health, I withdraw from that. What is not good for the mind, I withdraw from that. So this is mentally I am speaking. Mentally, not to have the cravings. Withdraw from that. That desire to eat more or to overindulge, withdraw from that desire. Or to imagine fancifully that happiness is in that object, brood imagining pleasure in certain things, imagining oneself enjoying that and feeling good. So withdraw from all that. So if we go a little more technical into Vedanta aspect here, three types of pleasures that we enjoy, they are called Priya, Moda and Pramoda. Priya is when the mind imagines sense pleasures and enjoyment and derives gratification out of that. So let us say it is very hot summer right now. So if one imagines, drinking a very nice, whatever, some cool juice filled with a lot of ice and all. Now mentally one is imagining. That is called Priya. There is no physical possibility of one is not enjoying it physically. Then Priya, then Moda. Moda is when there is a possibility of getting that, then the mind is more excited, much more it indulges in the imagination, much more impatient it becomes. And then Pramoda is when one actually is enjoying it. That time the mind feels so blissful. So when we say Shama, it is the control of the first two, Priya and Moda. If first two are controlled, the third won't happen. And even if it happens because of whatever past karma or something, that doesn't matter. One is not attached to it, one is not bound by it, it just passes. So this ability to control the mind from brooding and withdrawing from sense objects, along with focus on the goal, that is called as Shama. Shama also has, what Arjun said in the Gita, these four aspects are what constitutes Shama. So fickleness of the mind, Arjun said Chanchalam. Then Pramathi, impulsiveness of the mind. Then Balavat, strong, very strong in its attachment. And Dridham, it is unyielding. Even if you pull it away from the sense object, again it goes back. So these four aspects which are there, Arjun asks Krishna Bhagavan that how do I control this mind? Because my mind has these four. And Bhagavan says Abhyasa and Vairagya. So Vairagya we saw, this Shama is the Abhyasa aspect, where through practice of single pointedness, I bring back the mind again and again to the goal. So Chanchalam and Pramathi, restlessness as well as impulsiveness, these two are overcome by Abhyasa, which is Shama. What we spoke about, japa, visualization, all this. And strongly attached nature as well as unyielding nature, they are overcome by Vairagya. So when we say Shama, it means both fickleness and impulsiveness. So through the day, not to react impulsively, is to respond as a seeker. Through the day, not to allow the mind just to keep wandering, to occupy it constructively. So what Ramakrishna Paramahamsa used to say is, when I'm working in the world, hold on to God with one hand and work in the world with one hand. And when we have completed the work, hold on to God with both the hands. Meaning never let go of the hold on the Lord. Even if one is working in the world, with one hand work with whatever has to be done, and with one hand hold on to the Lord. Which is what Bhagavan told Arjuna in the Gita. Ma manusmara yujyacha. He said, remember me and fight. do it together. Meaning one part of the mind always retains that I am a seeker, I am a devotee of the Lord, and goes through the whole day with that bhav. That whatever Bhagavan has sent is for my good. How do I respond with balance, equanimity, all that. So impulsiveness and restlessness, they go when a person tries to cultivate shama. So what I was saying about moda, some of you couldn't listen about moda, is Priya, Moda and Pramoda. They are three levels of happiness. So Priya is when a person imagines some sense object and some sense pleasure. Moda is when there is a possibility of getting that, then that imagination becomes more, excitement builds up. The mind is much more indulging mentally. And Pramoda when one actually gets it. In Priya, one may imagine now and then, but in Moda, there is continuous imagination because now there is a possibility of getting it. So the mind keeps associating with that object. And in Pramoda, actually one is enjoying it. So the mind, when it is withdrawn from Priya and Moda, then it is called Shama, the state of withdrawal from brooding from sense objects mentally at both levels. That is called as Shama. And then I was speaking about the four aspects that Arjun spoke about: impulsiveness, restlessness. This impulsiveness and restlessness, they go by this Shama, by this practice of single pointedness. And strong attached nature and unyielding nature, they go by Vairagya. So when Bhagavan said Abhyasa and Vairagya, so Abhyasa is a practice of single pointedness and Vairagya is dispassion. So here that's what he's saying, the definition of Shama is this: withdrawing from the sense objects and focusing on the goal, that is called as Shama. Now this Shama is not possible unless there is Dhamma, which is the next quality. So Dhamma means sense control. Shama is mind control, Dhamma is sense control. Mind control is definitely more subtler, and mind control, when we have, senses also get controlled. But it doesn't happen like that generally. Because our mind is made up of thoughts based on our perception through the senses. And hence, what one has to do, first start with Dhamma. So let us see what is Dhamma. Is verse number 23. Vishayebhya paravartya sthapanam swaswagolake ubhaye shamindriyanam sadama parikirtitaha bahyanalambanam vrittehe ashesha uparatiruttama. Sorry. Esho uparatiruttama. That is the word. So in this 23rd, there is Dhamma and Uparati, both of them together. First two lines are Dhamma, next is Uparati. So Vishayebhya paravartya sthapanam swasva golake. So not allowing the mind to go out through the senses and to control the sense organs. So Shama means not to brood. Suppose one is imagining that I am enjoying such and such pleasure. Not to brood, that is Shama. And if the mind actually wants to go out, eat something, drink something, see something, which may not be, let us say, conducive or to which I am attached, then I want to withdraw from that, where I don't allow the senses to engage. Then that withdrawal is called as Shama. That withdrawal is called as Dhamma, where I'm controlling the sense organs. So if something unconducive comes, I close the eyes. That is called Dhamma. Same way, for something not conducive to hearing, let us say gossiping, then I move away from that place. Then the sense organ is controlled. Something not conducive to eat, I don't touch it, I don't eat it. Suppose somebody is gossiping with me, I am not able to move away. Then to withdraw the mind away from that, mentally to switch off, then that is called as Shama. So Shama is withdrawing the mind, Dhamma is withdrawing the senses, controlling the senses. So Vishayebhya Paravartya, withdrawal from the objects. And Sthapanam Swasva Golake, and ensuring that the senses are not engaging with the sense objects in any ways. So the eye is not constantly seeing something which is provocative, which is violent. One has withdrawn and the mind remains in the senses or applies into something better or conducive. Ubhayesham indriyanam sadama parikirtitaha. Ubhayesham indriyanam means both senses of knowledge and senses of action. All the 10 senses, when they are not engaging. So again, in two aspects, Dhamma is practiced. In the seat of meditation is actual withdrawal, where the eyes are closed, ears are withdrawing from all the objects. The speech only chants the name of the Lord or whatever mantra of contemplation. And smell, touch, everything controlled. Where one is actually withdrawn from all the sense objects and the senses remain only within themselves. Sthapanam swasva golake. And then through the day, when I'm not in meditation, not to take in anything through the senses which is not conducive for a seeker. Then that is called as Dhamma. So this Dhamma is more simpler to practice than Shama. And actually, if I practice Dhamma, then Shama will happen properly. If I want to control the mind and I'm not controlling the inputs, especially what I see and what I hear, the mind is going to be flooded with those sense objects. Then to resist the mind or prevent the mind from engaging, that is not going to happen. Even in the Gita chariot, we see the 4 horses. They are the symbols of our senses. And they need to be controlled first. The reins are the mind. So horse, when we control, that is the Dhamma. And through the mind, when we control the reins, then that is the Shama. Now, how are these to be practiced? Certain things very simple as far as sense control is concerned. First and foremost is to say a firm no to anything that is unconducive and harmful. Now, harmful definition itself varies. Something that is generally harmful, which is prohibited, that is one, which, let us say, smoking, drinking, eating things. So if I have diabetes, to eat the sugar, all that is prohibited, is harmful. To say a firm no to the senses that I will not engage in this, which is prohibited. Second is what is not prohibited but which is harmful to me. So let us say keep up late in the night, do some work, keep browsing, whatever. So sleep very, very late. That is harmful, no doubt. It's not prohibited. It is not, it is not a Nishiddha karma. But it is going to be harmful. It will affect the quality of one's interaction, meditation, everything. Same way, certain pleasures, they are not harmful, but the mind will get extroverted through them. So to withdraw from that, to say a firm no to the mind which is uh, wanting to engage in all these, to say a firm no to the senses, not to engage in it at all, which is why we do this uh, to develop sense control and to develop willpower. We do vrat, or we take a oath that okay, for 1 year I will not eat this, for 1 year I will not do this, or for 1 year I will do this. Maybe I will study every day one verse of the Gita, or every day I will ensure that for 1 year I don't sleep beyond, I don't keep awake beyond, let us say, 10 o'clock, whatever. So any of those methods by which I develop willpower to say a firm no to my senses, to engage in something which is harmful, whether prohibited or not prohibited. That is first aspect. Second aspect of sense control also is to delay the gratification, not to indulge in senses impulsively, but to use logic and only engage in what is not harmful. Even what is not harmful, not to engage in that impulsively. So if there is a sudden desire that, I must eat something, or our phone, impulsively, when we have free time, we just take the phone and start whatever, interacting. Especially when there is something important that one is doing, very easily one gets distracted. To delay that impulse, saying, no, now I'm not going to do this. After 10 minutes, I will check my phone. That delaying the gratification also helps to develop the sense control. Because many times it happens that if that moment passes, then the senses don't need to engage in it. We will just be able to let it pass. It won't even come back to our mind. Like sometimes we feel that I must eat something, drink something. But if that moment we let it go, then that craving just falls off. So delaying gratification is a second method. Third method is moderation. Slowly, because suddenly if we withdraw from all the sense pleasure, sense objects, it is not going to be so easy. Suppression will happen. So moderation is the method by which we withdraw from any extreme. Complete indulgence and complete withdrawal. Both these are extremes. So engage in what is not harmful in a moderate way. And when that dispassion and vairagya increases a lot, then even that will stop. So it's a step-by-step process of withdrawing from the senses rather than one, very forceful attempt with a lot of pressure just to withdraw. That will last for a very short time. Again, the desires will erupt, again a person will go back. So gradually one has to withdraw from the senses. And very important fourth aspect is to cultivate what we call as the sattvic ways of enjoyment. Because everybody needs to relax, to enjoy. If we find sattvic ways of enjoyment, then it will always become more rejuvenating and refreshing, and it will also bring more quietude and peace, creativity, all that. Rajasic and tamasic ways of enjoyment will make us more drained out, more unconscious, and a person becomes more dissipated, weak. So through sattvic ways of enjoyment, whether it is sattvic music or food or some movie that one sees which is inspiring, where one reflects upon it, any method, humor, sattvic humor. So all these will help the mind to slowly gain a certain
ability to withdraw. So when I'm engaging in sattvic enjoyments, I'm withdrawing from rajasic and tamasic. That is how I'm practicing sense control. Otherwise, the mind is habituated to rajasic and tamasic ways of enjoyment. It goes out through that. And anytime one wants to relax, that is what one is doing. So a person who understands this very well, that instead of withdrawing straight away, have sattvic alternatives. Vedanta is not saying that don't enjoy at all, but enjoy in a sattvic way which is not harmful. And slowly that one will transcend that through the joy of meditation. Even the dependency on sattvic enjoyment will go. So these are methods by which one can withdraw from the senses and train the senses basically. Then the withdrawal of the senses also happens. And if this is done, then in meditation also, when one is sitting quietly, there is no restlessness. Otherwise, many times we feel so much restlessness at the sensory level that many times when we are sitting for meditation, eyes have to open, we have to see something, or there's a tendency to speak out, or one needs to listen to something. Senses are not used to withdrawal. They are used to being engaged outside. They are, in the Upanishad it said, by default they are created extroverted. Kathopanishad says that. Paranchikhani Vyatrinat Swayambhu. Bhagwan has created this extrovert. The senses are by nature created extrovert. Very few people can turn them within. Kaschid dhira pratyagatmana maichat avritta chakshu. Avritta chakshu means one who has turned the senses within. Turn the senses within meaning the restlessness to run out is not there. One is able to stay quiet. No restlessness in the body. No restlessness at the sensory level. Eyes, ears, tongue, nose, skin, hands, legs, all 10 senses. So to keep the body stable, to keep the senses steady, there are so many simpler practices which one can do. So for example, in food, sattvic food, when we eat, one of the words used for sattvic food is rasya snigdha sthira hridya. These are 4 words which are juicy, lubricating, which make the body steady, and which are good for the heart. Now the third one, body steady. So to avoid food that will create unsteadiness in the body, restlessness in the body, whether it is spicy food or white sugar or even salt. So to some extent, whatever creates unsteadiness in the body, when I'm able to withdraw from that, then I'm practicing sense control. So in meditation, if I need to practice that sense control, it is to withdraw from all the sense activities. And outside meditation, it is to ensure that the senses don't engage in something which is harmful and engage in something which is sattvic, which will make the body ready for meditation, which will control the senses, which will help in withdrawal in the time of meditation, which doesn't make the mind restless to go out. So whether it is at the food level or speech level, what we talk, does it please our mind or does it create disturbance in our mind? So the restlessness to speak goes by, the restlessness of speech slowly goes by training the speech to use positive words, to use inspiring vocabulary, as well as chanting. Purifies the speech. So whenever the mind is not engaging in something constructive, one should take a rule saying, I will not gossip, I will not indulge in backbiting, I will not indulge in just negative talk. If there's something not appropriate, what can be done, let me do about it, but nothing more than that. Not allow the mind to keep talking about it and keep repeating the same thing again and again. And on the contrary, engage the senses in something more positive. So do Parayan, chant the Gita, chant the Upanishad verses, sing Kirtan, chant the name of the Lord. All these will help to train the senses. So in meditation, it is withdrawal from anything that is unconducive to steadiness and quietude. In the time outside meditation, it is all these, which is to build up the strength of the senses. Seeing, not to see anything vulgar, violent, disturbing. We spoke about hearing, about gossiping, about seeing. Same way about touch, the ability to withdraw the touch. Where there is no restlessness that I need to hold on to something. There is a attachment at the body level to certain things, to withdraw from all that. So when a person has trained the senses well through the day and in meditation, the mind is then focused. It is not wanting to enjoy through the sense objects. So that quality is called as Dhamma. Especially why Dhamma is so important is in Vivek Chudamani itself, it will come ahead. That the sense objects are more powerful than poison also. Because poison does not destroy somebody who sees it. But sense objects will destroy somebody who just sees it. Because through that the mind will start imagining. So if the senses are not controlled, if we see anything, eat anything, hear anything, talk anything, then to keep a mind which is quiet, not possible. So Dhamma and Shama, two very important aspects, they go hand in hand. What is Uparati? Bahya analambanam vrittehe esho parati ruttama. When we are trying to contemplate, nothing from outside world tempts me. That withdrawal from everything which is an external support or an external dependency, that is called Uparati. So Shama and Dhamma will lead to Uparati, full withdrawal. If Dhamma is not practiced, Shama will not happen. And if Shama is practiced to a certain extent, but there is not enough Dhamma, then again the mind will go out. Again the eyes will open, again one will get up, again one will do something. So Uparati is complete withdrawal, mentally and physically, both. So when the mind wanders, again I bring it back. That abhyas, when we keep doing, when that withdrawal is complete, that state of complete withdrawal from anything external. And here when we say anything external, bahya analamba, it means not only external objects that we see, it also means thought itself. Because we are trying to discover the self. From self standpoint, everything else is external. So keep withdrawing where the mind doesn't engage in any other thoughts except contemplation. Steadily contemplate. Only when that withdrawal is complete. So even contemplation starts only after the practice of withdrawal. When we do contemplation, that is what we do. Withdraw the attention from past and future to the present, from the present to the body, from the body to the breath, from breath to the mind, and mind to the intellect. And contemplate steadily using the intellect and transcend the intellect and the ego. So this process of withdrawal slowly, when that withdrawal becomes more and more deeper and complete, then that is Uparati. So Upam and Rati, this is the splitting of that word. Rati means to enjoy. Uparati means not to enjoy from something outside, but to withdraw from that enjoyment. Upa here doesn't mean nearby. Upa here means We have withdrawn. Actually, that is also the meaning. That is also the usage of that word upa in upavas. Upavas means sit near. That is one meaning. Sit near the Lord, having withdrawn from everything from the world outside. That's why no cereal that day, no regular food that we eat. So withdrawal and near, sitting near, that is the meaning. So withdraw from what is external and go closer to the support or the self, which is your own true nature. So this is about Uparati. So Shama, Dama, and Uparati. How to practice this Uparati? You know, in Tattva Bodh it was said Swadharma Anushtanam. The definition of Uparati in Tattva Bodh is Swadharma Anushtanam. So if I do what I really love to do, which is my Swadharma, my existing tendencies get exhausted, no new tendencies will get created. That is one form of withdrawal of the mind from anything non-conducive, because I'm doing what I really love to do. That was one method that was given there. Here again in two levels when we have to practice Uparati. One level is in meditation, how to gradually practice withdrawal of the attention. So taking the mind away from the thoughts of the past and the future, be aware of whatever is happening in the present alone. Whatever is happening around me. Basic simple happenings, sounds, air, warmth, or coolness in the atmosphere. Just be aware what is happening around. From that, focus onto the body. Withdraw the attention from outside. Focus only on the body, from the head to the toes. Slowly, when we finish that, focus only on the breathing. So systematically, one is practicing withdrawing the attention from outside, bringing it inside. And then in the day-to-day life, what is Uparati? Shama and Dama, when I practice fully, that state of mind when there is no more brooding happening, and that state of mind where the senses are not restless, that state of mind is Uparati. Which is why the definition in Tattva Bodh is Swadharma Anushtanam. Because the mind, when it is doing what it is really made to do, it will not have unnecessary imaginations and senses will not be restless. So to do what I truly love to do and to engage in it fully, single pointed attention towards that, then that is Uparati. At the action level. So these three qualities, Shama, Dama, Uparati, is what we see today, what we are seeing today. More we will continue on 9th. Tomorrow we will not have a class. Tomorrow is Chinmay Jayanti, so different programs are there throughout Mumbai. And if each of you can participate in any of these, morning 7 to 8 we have, 7:15 to 8:15 we have at Pavai Ashram, meditation, japa of Gurudev's name, and the Manasa Puja. The entire puja we will do in the mind. Then evening we have at Juhu. 108 names of Puja Gurudev, some activities on that, video of Gurudev, bhajans. Pavai Ashram, 10:30 in the morning, there is a program. So through the day, anywhere you can join, you are welcome to join. Or in your own centers, wherever it is, please go. And let us express our gratitude to Puja Gurudev. And we will continue on Wednesday morning. Right. Any questions, you are welcome to ask.
Swamiji, salt and sugar, how it affects मतलब body में स्थिरता क्यों नहीं आने देता? वो one question. And second, if someone is very much enjoying speaking and explaining Gita shloka to others, so is it also need to be controlled? And person is not able to control, होता ही रहता है, तो कैसे control करना चाहिए?
So sugar, white sugar has a lot of destabilizing effect on the hormones and the whole body. There's a lot of research. You can please go through that. It puts the whole body into a lot of in a panic mode actually. So that a lot of chemicals in that. So organic jaggery, all that is more better to use. There's enough documented evidence. A whole documentary called Sugar. You can read, you can go through that, how it affects the whole body and destabilizes the body. And same with this salt. Very minimum salt is what the body needs. What we eat is tremendous. Swami Shivananji used to always say that sugar and salt are one of the deepest addictions of human beings. They are not prohibited, but that's where it is. They are addictions. So in our culture, we have 1 month where we practice saltless food. Chaitra month, I think people follow that. Aluna, they do. No, Luna means that, Lavana means salt. So 1 month they will not eat. That is to get out of that dependency on salt. Where very minimum we require, and that also we require, we can use that Sindhav Namak instead of this other one, processed one. So those two, there are a lot of benefits of withdrawing from these. The body itself becomes very much stable. Sugar, 100%. I practiced it, I know it. Whenever one eats sugar, there is a lot of issue with the body. Second question is, as you said, speaking on the Gita is not a problem, but when people don't want to listen, then if I'm speaking, then there is a problem. So that I have to control. And how do I control it? Find people who are interested in the company of seekers, in study groups. There one can express. So one has an outlet to express as well as it is controlled. Or speak in such a way that we create interest in the minds of people, speak in small doses. Another option is write. As one writes, expression will happen. And slowly one is able to gain more clarity, which one would have got through speaking.
Okay. Thank you very much, Swamiji.
Okay, so we stop here. Om Purnamada Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnameva Vashishyate. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Hari Om Shri Gurubhyo Namaha. Hari Om.